Good afternoon. I'd like to call this April 17th, 2024 Port and Commerce Board work session to order. Welcoming to the board, Mr. John Howard. Congratulations on your appointment. And will the clerk call the roll?
Yes. Board members John Howard.
Present.
Melissa Scudder.
Present.
Dwayne Atwood.
Here.
Tom Miller.
Here.
Becky Dunn is not here. And Vice Chairman Ben Smith.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. So the topic of this work session is alternative energy projects, hydro, tidal power, and heat loop update. The Port and Commerce Board has pursued renewable energy in various forms and promoted the heat loop project for as long as I've been seated, and that's kind of ebbed and flowed with community interest and available projects. One of the kind of highlights, I think, of some of the work that this board did was help get the solar net metering going. I see. So I have on the phone here, I'm expecting a call from Renewable Energy Systems up in Anchorage, who's done a lot of the net meter installs in the city. So we should hear a report from them, and we'll see what their perspective is of doing business this far down the road system, and hopefully get some reports about how those systems are running. Also in the laydown, there is a Lowell Creek Hydro Project study that was commissioned, I believe, was it 2019? Is this dated? Yes, July 22nd, 2019. So this report was done to look at the viability of hydro from the Lowell Creek Canyon, and there's been some interest, some renewed interest in that recently, due in part for the publicity around the Army Corps project, building that new diversion tunnel. So I thought it'd be appropriate to bring this back to the dais and have a discussion. It's an interesting idea, and if I recall correctly, and we can work through this, this was a more informal process than a normal meeting, so we can take our time to go through this after we have our reports from the renewable energy systems and from the heat loop. The other part of this is the last year of outfall. This is USGS data that you can get online from that tunnel, and I think it paints a very important picture to consider when we're looking at the viability of these sorts of projects. I guess I'll open it up to the board. Any ideas on how we want to proceed with these topics today? And I guess one of the questions I would pose is, as the Port and Commerce Advisory Board, what sort of action items and what sort of work can we do to either lower the cost of energy, make it more available, make it cleaner, in general, to help our mission statement for the city. I think that's an important concept that we keep in mind when we're talking about these subjects.
So we have a couple of presentations, correct?
We do
Today? Okay.
Yes. So first it'll be the solar update, and then we'll probably do a heat loop update after that. Welcome, welcome, Mr. Schaefer-Meyer, and yeah, absolutely. I look forward to hearing about that. And then this hydro would be more of a group discussion, so we can go over this on the dais here, and welcome.
And do we have an agenda? Like, are we going to hear the presentations first and then discuss, or how's
the RES is going to call in at around 12:05. Was my suggestion. So we should be hearing from them shortly. And I suggested probably about a 10-minute discussion on that, and then we can do a Q&A and invite Q&A from the audience too.
Okay. I do have one question for city administration, since we're kind of in a standstill.
Absolutely.
Do we know, is the city utilities current on all the meter readings? Have they caught up, or are they still kind of lagging in some areas of the community, do you know?
I think they're pretty much all caught up from what I understand, yeah.
So we can run under the assumption that the costs that we're seeing now with the increase are what they should be, that there are people who are behind or
Right,
being charged for a couple of months.
yep.
Thank you.
And I guess along the lines of the utility, the current electric rate, for the record, that rate increase is fully in effect now, correct?
Correct.
So as we discuss things like solar net metering and things, that's an important consideration, as those projects tend to be, I think it might be going here. Hello, this is the Port and Commerce Board.
Hi, good morning. This is Eddie with Renewable Energy Systems.
Hi, good morning. Let's see, it looks like we're all online. Is it working okay through the mics?
I think so.
Okay, if you don't mind, if you could give us a rundown on how the solar installations have been going for residents in the Seward area, we'd be very interested to hear that.
Yeah, I think Kevin's calling in as well from he's my store manager in Anchorage.
Okay.
So we can only have one person call in, so if he can call maybe your cell phone, and you can have it on your cell phone, but we can't have only one person can call in at one time.
Okay.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, okay. So let me do that right now. Stand by, people. Get them on the line.
Hello, this is the Port and Commerce Board.
All right, you guys there?
We're here.
I'm here. All right, sorry about that. That kind of went backwards there, but I've got Kevin with me now.
Perfect.
Hey, how's it going?
Hi, Kevin.
Good. Kevin, you want to start by kind of talking about what we have already accomplished as far as installations and some numbers there, and then I can pitch in where needed.
Oh yeah, so we've got 24 projects in Seward as of our last Solar House campaign, and over the course of time, since the Solar House campaign, we've generated a cumulative 158 megawatt hours. So quite a considerable amount of energy there. We've got a lot more projects we're working on. Some more commercial projects in the pipeline. So a lot of great interest, great opportunities, and especially with the Inflation Reduction Act, that 50% grant money available. We're writing grants now that allow you to have 50% of the program paid for in the first year. So a ton of value there. We've had a lot of success in that.
Good job. So basically, that's between 120 and 140 kilowatts that are of installed capacity, just to kind of give you a little bit more information on that. And what Kevin is talking about is that, if you combine the potential for commercial businesses that can take advantage of the grant and the tax credit, depending on, you can get 80 to 90% of that paid for in year one, so it's pretty lucrative from the commercial side. And then obviously our high cost of power and the longevity of solar systems, it's a very quick payback even without the grant on the residential side for sure. So what questions do you guys have?
Go ahead, Lynn.
Yeah, hi, this is Dwayne Atwood, board member here. I'm just curious about a breakdown, just roughly. You mentioned 24 projects. Of those, what percentage would be commercial as opposed to residential?
Of what was installed, I would say probably 2 commercial projects already completed with more coming.
Okay,
Yeah, just looking at my list here, I think that's correct.
On average, what size would each project be in kilowatts?
For commercial or residential?
Well, I guess both categories, if you have that information.
You know, it's hard to say. It's based off each person's electrical appetite, electrical loads. You know, we base it off of their average cost of power. So we do a feasibility study for each one. So there's no real technical answer to that as far as capacity goes.
And we're sizing it to offset 60 to 70% of your electric cost year over year.
Okay. Do you have any information on cost savings from your customers? Or?
Well, what's your average cost of power right now?
Oh, okay. My mind is on the industrial rate. What is the residential?
32 cents, summer,
Around
38 winter,
32 cents average.
30 average.
So that's $50,000 over the last, annually.
Of what the systems that you guys have installed has produced?
Correct.
Okay. So
Yeah.
average out
I
over
know your
those.
cost of power changes seasonally.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just a rough number.
And let's see, the maximum size, if my memory serves, is around 10 kilowatts installed?
Would be 25.
20, up to
Yeah.
25 kilowatts? Okay. So a customer could go up to 25 kilowatts in Seward then, if that met their needs?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And that gives you your best payback before you start looking at only getting compensated for avoided costs, which is generally quite a bit lower than the retail rate. So the best bang for your buck, Now you could go larger, of course. That wouldn't be the determining factor. You can technically go larger, but your rate of compensation changes. But if it's 90% paid for, 80% paid for, the long term, that would really be a bad deal there either.
Okay.
Just depending on what our end game is for the customer. But generally, 25 kW is your best bang for your buck.
Okay.
And that way, if you're producing, say, most of the energy during the day and using a lot of their nights, all one-to-one money, right? You're basically offsetting the kilowatt hours that the energy or the solar is producing at the retail rate, right? So that's the quickest payback.
Additional questions from the board?
Yeah, Melissa Scott, our board member, and I admittedly don't really know how everything works, but how well do those work on the cloudy days? I mean, are they generating enough electricity in the winter when we don't get a lot of sun?
It's not a naive question at all. We like to say there's a lot of voodoo to it, but we try to take the voodoo out of it when we're talking about it. Unless there's snow on the panels, you're always going to be making some energy. And that really depends on the cloud thickness, but it can definitely make an impact on it. You guys have maritime, or what we call maritime weather. You've got more cloudy days in the interior, such as Fairbanks or even, Anchorage. So, if our average in Fairbanks is, 3.5 sun hours or, 3.2 sun hours in Anchorage, you guys are about 2.6, so a little bit lower annually, but they still do make power through the clouds for sure. So unless they're fully covered with snow, they're always going to be generating some power.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, great question.
Any other questions from the board?
Hi, Dwayne Atwood here again. I'm just thinking out loud, just getting a return on your investment. What is the anticipated lifespan of the units that are being installed? How many years do you plan for them to function and provide the customer service?
So we're looking at a design life of, 40, 50 years on the panels, and the equipment is guaranteed for 25.
Oh, that sounds like you would reach a payoff point then, certainly.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, many times over.
Yeah, generally, as far as the investment goes, you're getting 10 to 15% on your return pretty easily. And so you look at that, a 7 to 9 year payback, most cases, just on the residential side of things with 30% federal ITC, the federal, federal tax credit. So, 7 to 10 year payback on a residential system. Generally, 5 to 7 years on a commercial without, a grant, and 2 to 3 years with a grant. So, you're seeing incredible returns on your investment. And there are no batteries, there is no maintenance, I guess if there's really a bunch of pollen, or maybe you live next to a dusty road, or you live next to a concrete plant, you might want to get up there and wash them once in a while, but for the most part, there's no moving parts, phenomenal warranties like Kevin says, and unless you want backup power, you want storage in case the power goes out, there are no batteries, there is no maintenance. So very, very straightforward to operate and pretty much guaranteed a return. Our panels, the quality of the equipment that we use for Alaska, high snow load, high wind load, low light, split cell, and in some cases we use bifacial. If you're familiar with bifacial, that's where a panel that's at an angle, or say a ground mount or a pole mount, where they can capture some additional sun from the backside. You have panels that make power from the front and the back. So those are other things, other types of benefits that our panels provide for Alaska specifically.
Yeah, no, thank you for that information. Do you do installations generally during the construction season, or can you do that any time of year? How does that work?
Yeah, I think, metal roofs in the winter are not something that we're going to work on. If there's snow on the roof anyway, or if it's frosty or slippery. But, shingle roofs we can definitely push the envelope on. Ground mounts we can do year-round. Pole mounts we can do year-round. And some flat roofs we can do year-round. So there is some considerations on the type of roof, the material of the roof, but our installers do work year-round.
Great, thank you.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
I just want to confirm the tax credits and the grant opportunities. Are those available for both residential and commercial customers, or one or the other?
Available for, go ahead, Kevin.
Oh, yeah, so 30% federal tax credit is available, residential and commercial. The grant, though, is for commercial.
And there's no cap on that 30% tax credit, so there's no upper limit, unlimited. Just as long as you have a tax appetite or a tax burden that you can apply that to.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent information. We did talk a little bit about the warranty and really lack of required maintenance. How has the reliability of your systems been? If you want to speak to that, has there been anybody that's had issues or needed parts replaced?
Failure rates on solar panels and the equipment is 0.0001.
Oh.
So they don't fail. They do need to be replaced because, something fell on them, or, somebody shot it, or, a big rock was thrown at it or something. But the equipment itself, out of 100,000, if you had, 5 or 10 you replaced, that would be it. So
Okay.
panels don't fail, but periodically, if there was a condition where you would be replacing something, it would possibly be a controller on the solar array. But those themselves, those are warranted for 25 years. So, I mean, you're even then, it's paid for itself 3 times before it even could potentially have to be an out-of-pocket expense for the most part.
it's a real testament to the durability of the product that, you know, the manufacturer can afford to warranty these things for so long. I mean, they really don't fail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's been my experience. I think solar seems to be very mature as a technology.
Compared to wind, which, man, that's tough. And I always say, hey, go solar, do a little bit more solar, and then do a little bit more solar, and then maybe we'll talk about going wind. You know, due to the moving parts and noise and towers and maintenance, and, you know, solar is so elegant, so simple.
Agree. Could I open it up to citizen questions, if you guys have time?
Oh, yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, is there any questions from citizens on solar for Seward? Comments?
Oh, I guess to respond on the cloudiness, I was just kind of looking at my data and, you know, yesterday I made, what was that? 18 kilowatts of power, or 8 kilowatts of power, and the day before when it was really sunny, it was 15 kilowatts on my little system. So that was kind of difference of a overcast day versus a sunny day.
You could do the math, and if that works out in today's rates.
And how many panels do you have, Pete?
I have 12. Not ideal slope. I got shading, I got, you know, but by no means the most perfect. What's nice about cloudy days is the shading from your neighbor's tree goes away.
That's right.
So I don't know if this question is for renewable energy systems, mainly to the Commerce Board. In regards to our utilities going up, you know, is the city going to be pro alternative energy where they'll see a loss of income that goes into our general operating costs, where we rely on utility funding, you know, to help fund our government? And if we see, you know, this huge movement of you know, solar power, you know, heat pumps, what kind of forethought has the board thought about when loss of revenue? And, you know, 10 years from now, that it's like we've all gangbusters, especially commercial, 50% cost from a grant. I mean, that is amazing. I wish it was for residential too, but you know, one step at a time. So that's kind of, you know, thinking forward in regards to benefits to the city of Seward.
Would the administration like to comment?
No.
No?
No, I think we'll obviously would have to address that. If we get that kind of capacity onto the system, then you would have to have conversations about that, so.
Yeah, because.
Above my pay grade.
Yeah, because I've already brought it before our board at Senior Center, which we occupy a city building, and we want to put on our, you know, flat roof as many panels as we can, because that helps the administration of senior services not have to do as many fundraising opportunities to be able to pay that rising cost of utilities. Yeah. So if we have capital and we're listed as commercial with a 50% you know, grant to cover our costs, I'm even more pro about let's move forward on that. But will the city of Seward support that? In this, you know, city, you know, will the city be the first one to put panels up in the commercial, you know, especially at that cost, 50%?
Just from a usage perspective, adding solar to your house is basically like turning everything off from what the utility sees. They don't see that load anymore. Maybe Eddie and Kevin, do you have, like, how much power is actually exported from your systems, or is it mostly just offset internally by the users?
The benefit of a feasibility study is so that you use the majority of it internally.
Okay.
Obviously, with such big swings in solar exposure on a seasonal basis, that there are going to be times where you're overproducing, but generally that's not real favorable to sell power back to the utility. And definitely right, we do take some revenue away from the utility in this case, but it is everybody's moving this direction. And I think a caveat to the grant would be that it is small business, commercial, so there are some limitations on whether it could be, I don't know what the limit is for employees on a small business. Is that 60, is it 40, is it 30, is it, is there something else that caps that out? I'm not sure. So it would be good to double check on that. I was looking while we were talking. The other thing is too, is that as you install more and more solar, generally the utilities do have a cap. In Fairbanks, it's 6% of our, 6% of their annual kilowatt production is, but that's always being raised, we can go as high as 40% penetration without any issues. I think Hiko or Hawaii Utility is a good example, is that they've maxed out, and so it's the people that are doing it first that are going to grandfather in and get the best benefit out of it. With respect to the grants, we've been successful on every grant that we've written for our customers. So, we know the money is there now. It's not always been that case. Some years the funding just isn't there, but every grant that we've written with our feasibility studies and expectations have been scored highly, and the customers have been approved and been able to move forward.
Excellent. Well, if there's no more questions from the board or any more discussions, Mr.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
You mentioned, first of all, snow. I wanted to know if you have a recommendation for a material or a brush or with long handle or how do you use this, what's the best method to get the snow off? Do you sell the brushes? Also, net metering. We do net metering in Seward, so I just wanted to point that out to anybody listening or listening later on YouTube. And for net metering, do you have to have battery? You don't have to have batteries. Could you explain a little bit about how that works? No?
Yeah, no need for batteries there with net metering. You're basically using the grid as your battery. So you can produce a lot during the day and use the majority of that at night when you're not producing, and it's just one-to-one. It doesn't matter when you're producing or when you're using it during that same billing cycle, right? It's just kilowatt hour for kilowatt hour.
Yeah. At the retail rate.
Yeah.
And then it's at the end of the billing cycle, if you've produced more than you consumed, and let's just say a 30-day billing cycle, if you produce more solar energy than you consumed, the credit that gets carried forward to reconcile your account is credited to you as generally what the avoided cost of power production is. And all utilities have a published avoided cost of power production. And generally it's a third or smaller of what the retail rate is. So while you do get a credit, they do buy from you under net metering. There's obviously they have to be able to absorb that, and since they didn't produce it, you get that, that wholesale cost, so to speak, credited towards next month's bill. And then with snow cover, our panels are incredibly durable. They're designed for hundreds of pounds of snow. They're actually designed for a 1-inch ball of ice at 80 miles an hour to bounce off of it. They're high, at least the ones that we have. And then so we use plastic, anything but metal you can get away with on a solar panel. So the most durable brushes that we found, there's some soft, foam ones that just, I don't use those. I tend to get or we do stock them, but so does Home Depot and Lowe's. It's got a plastic kind of a 14-inch wide, 8-inch high, plastic scoop on it that you just pull back and you clear your panels. One thing to mention is that when you're making $7 worth of power in January, if your panels were clear, the priority is really not those meager winter months, although we can see the season, we can see spring and fall and have snow on them where it would be advantageous to clear the snow. But those January months, what I'd say is from mid-November to mid-February, really you're not going to save much by clearing them, but after mid-February, and then I think where you guys have the mountain in the way, probably end of February, you're really benefiting from having those panels cleaned. Where you'd be making $7 worth of power in January, well, you'd be making $700 worth of power in March, just to help you out with maybe prioritizing that. But hopefully that answers your question. And I just spaced out answering, I think Phil would agree about the heat pumps. That's kind of a great match when you go with a heat pump or, that type of equipment for a home, is that solar is a perfect match because your cost per power is going to go up, and solar is a great way to manage that, just like adding in an electric vehicle or another similar electrical load to the property.
Okay. Mr. Kaluza.
Well, I guess the one comment on our electric rates that is frustrating to some of the folks who didn't quite understand, as middle of summer and your load goes down and your production goes up, when you get to the point, say you got down to 0 kilowatts, that you produce as much as you consume, but you still have to pay your $22 monthly service charge, and on top of that, there's a minimum, essentially 150 kilowatt charge. So you're going to have to pay for 150 kilowatts, whether you used it or not. So that kind of surprised some of the folks in the last few years, and that was not set up for the solar, the penalty for solar. I think it was more the snowbirds who leave, and it kind of required them to pay a little more whether or not they're using their power. But that really does affect how they want to size a system, because you make it too big and you're basically either paying for it retail or you're only getting 12 cents back for whatever excess. So there's not any great benefit to go over what you're consuming. So that does limit the size that economically people would want to put up, even though they may have more room and could. It's just not economical.
Yep, and that's why we sized each one accordingly. So that with that feasibility study or the customer's energy demand is what we size around, so that we minimize that. And yeah, you're going to have some basic administrative or infrastructure fees. So good point.
I did have one more question for Kevin. What's the end date for the grant?
June 31st.
Of this year?
Yes.
Thank you.
And we need about 30 to 45 days to start the process. So now is the time to start making sure that we're getting in on, in queue to if we're going to write the grant for you anyway, to get it successful, get in a little bit early and not at the end of the line there.
Excellent question.
Is that grant available for government or government-funded entities?
Good question.
Probably not.
Although I think it's worth mentioning, not exactly related, but that 30% federal tax credit, you do receive a 30% credit as a nonprofit. So, churches, nonprofits, that kind of thing, even though you might not have tax liability, you would get a credit.
What would that do for the nonprofit? What would that credit do?
Yeah, they're not taxed.
So that would give them a 30% direct payout, so a check.
Oh.
Keep going, Dana.
Okay. Well, we have a few other items on our agenda for this work session. So maybe one last round of, any comments, Eddie and Kevin, to close out?
Really appreciate you guys inviting us to talk about this, and we're available if anyone has follow-up questions. Ben has our contact information.
And I think Phil is a great resource as well. We're working right now to hopefully spearhead another, and this is not us doing it, this is Phil doing it, spearhead another potential group effort to solarize and provide some discounts there. And then, I guess you guys are probably, it's something that pays for itself, but, for those who are still on the fence, is that you are going to spend $20,000 to $40,000 over the next 10 years just on power. So even if you finance it, you would be at least paying yourself and paying for it, in that capacity. So it's a great investment. It does add value to your home, 75 cents on the dollar. It's phenomenal environmental impact as well. I'll leave it at that. And we do appreciate your time for sure. Appreciate the opportunity to answer questions. And like Kevin says, we can answer any follow-up questions or somebody's, wants to talk about going solar, then we're available.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time. Excellent discussion. I'm going to hang up on the PACAB here, but you can watch us on YouTube if you want to hear about the heat pump updates. Thanks.
Cool. All right, thank you.
I think that worked. All right. That sounds like there's a lot of opportunities on a couple different fronts there to really cut your individual energy costs. I think that's the main takeaway from solar, and then we'll let the city figure out what they need to do if there's too many installed.
Right. Yeah.
All right, Mr. Schaefer-Meyer from the ad hoc committee, you're welcome to provide an update on.
If I can get up to there. Don't ever get polio. It affects your life. You want to know why I'm moving so slow? I was part of that 1953 polio pandemic that hit Seward. And it's come back to take me down. Anyway, which it does do. Give me a second here to see if I get this thing to recognize me here. There we go. I've been asked by Mary Tugas and Bruce Jaffa to give you a bit of an update on the heat loop project that some of you may be familiar with, but I'm speaking to basically a new group, PACAB here. Since I was involved with PACAB, there's been, aside from Chair Jaffa, there's been, I think, 100% turnover since I was served on the board back, I don't know how many years ago, 2018, I think I left the board. So I welcome you all. I welcome the new members that just joined. I know both of you, of course, and I think I know all of you. This is Seward. Anyway, just a little bit of a background. I didn't get the information that I wanted that I could have provided to Madam Clerk there to put it up on the screen, but I got it too late this morning from Mr. Baker, who was not able to participate in this today because of other commitments that he was involved in. But he's the engineer that designer of the heat loop project. Just a little background on the heat loop. Could I see just by a raise of hand how many of you are familiar with the heat loop project? I know John and some of you are. Enough of you are, I guess. I don't need to spend too much time on the background. The city was a recipient of a grant, I think, in April of a year ago from the Department of Energy. It's a two-phase process, and they received the first round of that grant, I think, in April. It was formally kicked off. The project was kicked off in November of last year. It's a year-long effort. And it consists primarily of completing the design, but also completing data collection and developing the community aspect of the project, which is, I think,
one of the things that excites me the most probably right now is the ability to integrate what we're doing with AvTech as part of a training program with the school in training folks to install heat pumps in Seward. And we selected a system that was designed and developed by Sanco 2. It's a CO2 refrigerant heat pump that provides primarily domestic hot water heat. And it's got a lot of applications in multifamily residential settings, apartment buildings, but also local homes, residential homes. And so a week ago, or let's see, 27th of March, a representative from Sanco came up and the city had received, and AvTech had received the unit that was purchased with proceeds of the grant, and kicked off a training program for local installers and for the school to be trained, instructors to be trained on how to teach on that particular unit, or it would be applicable to all units because they're pretty much universal in how they work. And so that was completed. That was a 2-day program. The project developer, John Miles from Sanco 2, came to Seward and was here with a fellow by the name of Mark Houston from Anchorage, who's an Alaska distributor and installer of that system, and along with Andy Baker and came and they put on a program, 2-day program to train local people. It was attended by, I think, John Howard was there for at least one day of it, and I think Darian Draper was also able to attend a day of the training, and 2 city employees were there for both days of the training, and we're very excited to see that. And of course, the instructors at AvTech were present through the whole thing. So that was completed, and so they got those who completed the training got certification and be able to install those systems in the future. And there was a press release that the Heat Loop committee put out. So I think it's on their website. Kind of memorialize that event. Where we go from here, on May the 14th and 15th, representatives from NREL, they're the federal partners that's involved with working with us on the project. Their engineers will be in Seward along with Andy Baker. And background, there's back to the kickoff of the study phase of the project. There were heat sensors that were put down in the test well that was drilled a number of years ago as part of the project that was kicked off by the city. And they've been collecting data over this past winter. And they will be coming to collect the final round of data for completing the design and phase of the project. NREL is modeling the project. They're developing a model to model all the economics and data that's made possible by the data that was collected from the well, and that will all go into completing the final design of the system. System's very simply a project to connect 4 city buildings as part of this campus that we sit in. The library annex, city hall, and the fire hall. That's the project scope, to provide a heat loop system for heating those 4 buildings. And so once the data is all completed and collected and the design is completed, which is envisioned by November of this year, that will complete phase 1. The phase 1 of the grant was a $315,000 federal grant. There are 11 communities participating in this program across the country. Seward is one of them. The goal is to be able to be invited to go forward and submit a round 2 grant, which will actually provide development funding to actually complete the installation of the project, go forward. So that's the goal. That's the goal, to be able to achieve that. I will add that this project has quite a bit of interest in the Department of Energy because of the very innovative thing that we're doing here. Using seawater, now that's being done across the world. Denmark and Sweden and Norway have been doing it for years, using seawater as a source heat for large-scale heat pump heating, heat loops. But what makes our project a bit unique is the fact that we're using ground wells right along the water line that takes basically converts the heat in Resurrection Bay, which is substantial, and captures it without any of the negative effects that you have by pumping seawater. The cost of pumping, dealing with biofouling, dealing with silts and other things, that all goes away with what we're doing here. And by basically it converts seawater heat source into a ground source system. That's very attractive to the Department of Energy because that has substantial application in many, many places in this country. And so if we can prove that technology to work here and use this as a test bed system, obviously the wind for the city is cheaper form of heat for its buildings, and also to be able to show the rest of the community that it's possible for Seward to do this kind of a system to heat Seward. That's my ultimate big dream, my big BHAG, if you want to know my big audacious hairy goal. When I got involved with heat pump systems years and years back now, was to see, eventually, hopefully see Seward being able to really take advantage of that and provide very green and very affordable, hopefully affordable. Now it's effective, of course, it all gets affected by your cost of energy, electricity being chief of which, but still, hopefully, it will be, in the long run, be something that we could look at for the community. And we have to start in baby steps. This is a baby step here, doing this. We know it works. We know it has worked at the Sea Life Center. Ben might have some more knowledge about that recently than I do, but it does work if your source energy supply works well and your equipment performs well. Anyway, that's where it's at. We hope that by November we'll be able to be invited to apply for the second round of money and get funded and go forward and build this thing. I said the training has been put in place with Avtech, so that relationship, that linkage has been provided. That's an important component for doing this project, is to have a way of training people on how these systems work. I don't know how many heat pumps have been installed in Seward. John might have a better idea than that. I mean, I have one in my home. I've had now for about 4 or 5 years. And I know there's quite a few being installed around. Maybe not as many as John would have liked to see, but
utility rates definitely not going to help
installing them. But I know I recently helped my son get one put in his home. He hasn't turned it on yet because he hasn't got the power hooked up to it yet. But I think it's got great future for Seward, and we're seeing the benefits already. Happy to answer any questions. I kind of rambled on here, but I was asked on real short notice to make this presentation, so and I'd hoped to have been able to put some things on the screen, but I missed that deadline, so didn't do it.
Well, thanks for coming, though. Not pumping seawater is huge. I definitely am appreciative of that design prospect there, and I'm very interested to see what that modeling shows.
It's looking very, very good. It's you say that what data has been collected thus far looks like very feasible.
Okay.
It's going to work well as far as the energy supply.
Okay. Go around the dais and
Is part of the budgetary number, is that for being submitted with round 2 or stage 2 grants, or is that after the fact number that's being put together?
Well, we already have early on cost estimates for doing the project. We're looking at a project of around $3 million to do all 4 buildings, maybe a little bit more depending upon the final design. But that's the number of the scope and magnitude of the project. So it's a big number. One of the things that I think I forgot to stress here, the importance of adding some snow melt system in with this project. That helps the economics of your heat system, particularly if you're using natural refrigerant heat pumps, because they'll lift a long way, and they perform better when you have cooler temperatures coming back into the system, and adding snow melt to that really makes the economics improve on it. So by that, it's going to be important, I think, to incorporate some of the heated sidewalks around the library, and ultimately, I think, around City Hall and wherever you do that. It makes a lot of sense here. It's a very good thing to have snow melt, so you don't have to shovel your walks. Your concrete doesn't deteriorate, and in this case, it would help the operating system of how the heat pumps work and operate. So that's something we're going to encourage as our group, our committee, that this be to the extent that we can get that included in the grant, and even if it's not included in the grant, I think it's important for the city to look at that as it looks at doing systems like this. I mean, a long time ago, Willard Dunham sat here in this chair, not in this chair, but in this room, and talked to the then PACAB and even council about having a vision of looking at heating the sidewalks in downtown Seward with this type of a system. And snow melt and sidewalk snow removal has been a problem for eons and days here in Seward, and every year it's a problem for the city to notify businesses that they got to remove their snow, and on and on and on. And so it's very possible. I mean, there's places in Europe where it's done all the time.
I think that goes a long way to improving the livability of this town.
Yeah.
And if you look at the cost of just one slip and fall injury, this almost pays for itself pretty quick.
I can really testify that if I've gotten so I can hardly walk, it's really helpful to have snow off the sidewalks.
I have a question for you about the grant. Do you have a dollar figure on that grant of the $3 million that this is expected to cost?
Well, the city has been the recipient of a $700 and some odd dollar grant, I can't remember the exact number, from the state of Alaska, and it's used a bit of that paid for the design of the project. So it's got some amount of something in the order of around $600,000 left in the balance of that Alaska energy grant. So there's that in place, still sitting in an account in Juneau, and then so the bulk of the project will have to be funded from other sources, and that's what we're hoping that the Department of Energy, who's awash in money right now, unbelievable amounts of money that's been available for doing energy projects, that will be successful in getting enough in this next round, if we're asked, and I'm pretty sure we're going to be asked to compete for that and go for it because of the real interest they have in innovative things we're doing here. Nobody else in the other 11 communities doing anything near as exciting or innovative as what we're talking about here. And so I think we have a good chance of, the city has a good chance of being successful there, and our committee's here to help that along and assist PACAB and assist the council and city administration. Keeps an old guy like me going.
So one of the kind of hang-ups, I think, on heat pumps is the changing utility rate structures. We have the different rate classes. Obviously, for a residential rate, the costs have gone up, so the heat pumps are a little less economical, but it's not as big of an impact as maybe like for the industrial rate users that have to pay the demand costs, which is quite substantial. What is the library, like what rate class are they?
Well, it would be in large general.
Large general service?
Yeah, service,
Okay.
I believe. And so that's gonna, now, one of the things that we are looking at, I forgot to mention this, is that we have looked at solar PV as an adjunct project that Department of Energy is also interested in, NREL's interested in. And when they come here in May, I think they're gonna take another look, some more look at the library itself. Preliminary examination of the library, approximately 22 kW of solar could be installed on the library. Now, that's not a whole lot. That would be about 5% of the energy requirement of this. But they're also gonna look at off-site locations for solar. And I know Jason may be a little bit more familiar with that. And which would have some benefit to help this project, but also help the entire community, the ratepayers of Seward. If you could install whatever amount of solar PV, that would go back in to help. The city doesn't have to buy as much power from Chugach, and it has a benefit then of helping some of that COPA that we're all paying on our bill. Get it back that way. We have to take this a bite at a time. I mean, I've been struggling with energy and sewer for eons of days looking at it. I was involved in a little hydro project with PACAB and helped push that along. And Jason may speak to that a little bit here. Looked at also, there's potential of hydro in the 4th of July Creek. But there's not a lot of potential in sewer for alternative energy. I'll just tell you that right now. Not good wind here. So we have to take what we can and then also do our part to help cut greenhouse gases here. And but in my own personal case, when I put my heat pump in my house, I was paying, my electric bill was running about $800 a month then. At a much lower rate, not a much, but a lower rate of energy costs than we have now. When I put that in and started using that, I cut my electric bill to $400 a month. Cut in half immediately.
Were you using fuel oil heat?
No,
or,
I have an all-electric house.
Okay.
So what I was able to not use is electric baseboard, which is hugely expensive. And so I was able to track my energy bill down. Not quite so successful now with the new rate increase. I took about a 35% hit in higher bill since the rates kicked in. I don't know what it's going to be like over the long continuum. We're going to see the summer rates kick in, so we're going to even have a higher rate here pretty soon. But I don't, and I use my heat pump all I use wood heat in the wintertime a lot because we like the wood heat. But I use my heat mostly from about March until usually into through October. So that's my sole heating in my home in those months primarily. So I recommend them. I really do. I've been part of installing 3 of them in my own personal case. If you can look at your place, you have a way you can integrate it in your home. It's well worth looking at. And these new systems that Avtec's been trained on and John installed, for your domestic hot water. Pretty exciting that way too. And if you have a small enough home and you have the right kind of hydronic heating, they might even work for like your Wurzbo heating.
If you like, a net zero house, they work just fine.
Yeah, so there's even application there for these particular sand coat If, I was gonna bring the link, but if you would like to go on to Sanco 2, look them up on YouTube or on your website, there's a wonderful short video there with John Miles installing one of these things in a home, I think it was in Oregon. Same guy that came and did the course here. Very simple and easy to install, actually. Not a whole lot. Pretty exciting. And they use CO2 natural refrigerant. So there's no greenhouse warming potential impacts with that particular type of refrigerant, and that's where we should all be going in this technology, is with natural refrigerant. So I commend you to go on YouTube and take a look at that. You can see what it is. See one of these units actually being installed in a home, and see basically the same thing that we saw here at AvTech here back on the 27th and 28th of last month. So, thank you.
Do you know off the top of your head what the expected lifespan of the Sanco units is? How do they compare with the R134A systems?
I can't remember what.
They said like 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
So a little shorter than a conventional heat pump, or?
No, about the same.
Okay.
I mean, I put mine to a real hurt test here when it's cold weather, and I had it cranked up to 85, and it finally tripped.
Huh.
And I had to go back and trip the breaker and reset it. But it's not designed to do that. You know, I mean, that's really in that particularly cold weather. And man, that thing, I got this morning, my house was 76 degrees. You know, on and
Yeah.
they're wonderful.
If installed properly, they work great.
Yeah, I got it installed correctly, but if you do work, and you have to look at the size of your home and where you put them and all of that. And I'm actually thinking about maybe putting, because I have a split level, and thinking of putting another one in to provide a little better heat up into the living area where we spend most of our time. And then I wouldn't have to be shoving so much wood in the wood stove in the wintertime. Getting too old to do that. So anyway, so I'm an early adopter of heat pumps and this form of heating energy, and I can tell you, of course, you all know that I was involved getting them fathered and put in the Sea Life Center, and it literally saved the Sea Life Center financially. I mean, I'll tell you that straight up. We were spending so much money on fuel oil and everything that we were able to turn the corner then anyhow and operate. We dropped $15,000 a month in operating costs off of fuel source operating costs. That's pretty substantial.
Well, hopefully the schools can do that soon. They're talking about.
Well, that's another thing I can talk about. You're all familiar with our schools up here and how much they cost. They're the most expensive schools in the entire school district. And most of you don't know, but the borough owns the schools, not the school board or the district. They're owned and operated by the borough. It's a borough cost. And every year it comes up the cost of operating the schools here and operating the pool, which of course has to have heat and water. We have 3 buildings in a relatively close compact there. And I'm a firm believer that with some studying, some engineering, we could look at putting a ground source system here that would heat that entire campus of schools. Now, it's going to take some changes in their heating system, no question about that. But with the new refrigerants and heat pumps that are out there now, the way they operate to 194 degree temperatures, you can put in, you can make these kind of things work. And that's where we need to be looking. That's where we got to have a vision to, yeah, it's going to cost some money, but look at how much they're spending every year heating those schools.
If anybody's interested in watching that go through, they should call Cindy Eklund. She's kind of trying to.
Cindy's a proponent. She would like to see it done, but
was,
she's a single voice on a 9-member board, and they don't have a lot of vision over there. Because it's hard to get those guys to see it over there because they've been relying on so many years of low-cost gas. Now, the gas is getting pretty expensive, and it's also getting more scarce, but they are not early adopters over there looking at green energy or heat pumps, I can tell you. And so the education process is huge to get them to see that vision. Now, Cindy's 5-4 vote, after a lot of arm twisting, got them to advise, not direct, but advise Mayor Kuchicki to look at putting in some air source heat pumps in the 2 schools out in the outer reaches of the borough.
And that took a couple of years to get that far.
Out in Port Graham and English Bay. That's just to try to help those schools out with their heating costs. But there's no guarantee that they're going to do that. There's no requirement of requests that it be done or anything like that, just to have him look at doing that. So that's how hard it is to lift this ball up off the ground and get people to look at doing stuff. It's not easy. And you guys PACAB's been a real supporter and early adopter of doing stuff like that. I commend you for that. I'll shut up. I know you got other things to do here.
One of the, I guess before you go, one of the things that we've talked about on this board in the past was the concept of a heat pump energy rebate or some sort of incentive from the city. And I don't know, any thoughts on that from administration or for?
Phil and I have been doing that for a lot.
I think if we are going to promote that in this town, that's something that we you can shift numbers around to make it more appealing or make it more palatable for people, especially as we increase the electric rates.
It's just a question of how do you make it economically work and fit for operating a utility.
Yeah,
and that's not an
just
easy
shifting.
thing to do.
I think one of the benefits we talked about though is that the utility will have a known demand from that system.
The benefit is the city will sell more power.
And they know how much they can get.
Shoreside will sell less heating oil.
So anyway.
The chamber has one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if anybody wants to see one working, the sewer chamber has one. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I was the second, well, Phil was at me, but I think I was the second one put in.
Yeah.
I used to have Eric at the
in
the refrigeration class.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come and.
You're welcome, and I commend what you guys do. You do some great things. Thank you for your service.
And I just want to say thanks for the people that are on that heat loop committee. They actually do a lot of work.
Well,
and so we're
we need to thank Jason.
We're grateful for them doing that. So
without him being the connection between, I guess, the administration and heat loop committee and you folks, what we do wouldn't be possible, because you've got to remember this is a city project, city facilities, and we're just there in an advisory capacity.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
If anybody wants to be kept in the loop, they can call the clerk's office and be put on an email for the heat loop information or the heat loop ad hoc committee
the
meetings.
heat loop has a website. I think we have a Facebook page. They just recently put out a little one-page press release. We actually have some press professional help right now. Sam, what's Sam's last name? He used to work with the...
McDavid.
Yeah, they work with the local paper. He's been contracted with the committee to provide media coverage and social media stuff about it and stuff. So very helpful.
Excellent. Okay.
Thank you very much. Taking the house down here.
So for the board, I would recommend we consider at some point maybe doing another work session on the topic of the heat pump rebate options. I think that's a viable way that we can help enable that technology. right. What do you think?
Good
Well,
stuff.
hydro?
A lot of good stuff.
A lot of good stuff. Since this hydro was on the list of things that was the topic for discussion on this work session, and this may be new for some, and it's certainly worth looking at. This study completed by Andy Baker was fairly extensive, and I believe it's a very kind of accurate and realistic expectation of what a system like that could do. I do monitor, in my line of work, I monitor the outfall of that tunnel pretty closely, and I've requested the year of flows for this last year be included as a laydown. And page 23 of the study, there's some of the estimates for the economic viability of this project, and I'd just like to point out that the flow through that system as a flood diversion structure, it was problematic for the towns why they built the tunnel, and if you look at these numbers, where he has 40 cubic feet per second, and if you draw a line on this last year's data, on that 40-foot line, see there's very little, it's a good chunk of the year there where we do have around 40 cubic feet per second, but it's not 8 months. And then there's another period of time there from January through currently where it's basically been nothing through there. You could walk across the flume. That would not be advisable, but there's very little flow. So this is a very interesting read, and I suggest taking the time to go through it. And it's worth talking about some of the pros and cons for why we'd want to do something like that. I think at the time the city was not interested in becoming a generator of electricity, and I believe that's probably still the case. It takes a lot of resources to maintain and operate a hydropower plant, and I have actually done that as a part of my profession. I've operated an off-grid hydro plant for about 4 years, and I'm familiar with what goes into that. That would have been about a quarter of the size of the one that's proposed in this project, the one I was involved with. Being off-grid, though, that makes all the difference in the world. It's very economical at that point. But from the board, is there any of this you want to go through, or comments? Yeah.
A little bit of history.
Sure.
Intimately involved in that whole effort.
Okay.
Part of PACAB, chair of the board at the time. Actually, before that, my very first introduction to Andy Baker back in 2008, he was actually on his own looking up the canyon as a potential for that project. He was not contracting anybody, he was not doing it for anything other than his own personal professional interest. And he happened to be in Seward, and I think he presented a little bit of something to PACAB way back then, and that's how I first got to know him. So PACAB was the one that really encouraged the administration and the council to go ahead with the feasibility project that they did fund with European Energy, and then that's the basis of the outcome is that report. What hasn't been said here is the fact that the city did go forward under contract with USGS to do 3 years of monitoring. For reasons that I don't know, back on October the 5th, I know the exact date, the then assistant city manager canceled the contract. The city didn't go forward, so they lost all they had 2 years of data, that's all gone now. Because in order to go forward with any kind of FERC permitting or anything like that, you have to have 3 successive years of flow data. And that was being developed by USGS. That would have been, at least at that juncture, completion of that flow data, looking at whether or not there was something there that might be of interest to go forward to try to get a FERC license.
next step into the hydro project. So that's where it ended, right there. And whether or not it's something that's worth looking at. I mean, I'm aware of this. We have a citizen in the community that's talked about putting hydro in the tunnels. That's not this project, put hydro in those tunnels. It's not feasible. There's a lot of reasons why that's not feasible. But and I know this has come to the forefront of the council now, hearing about this every meeting for the last several council meetings, about doing something with Wolf Canyon, with the tunnels. Anyway, you have the report. It says what it says. Whether the city wants to be interested in becoming an electrical generator, it's not for me to say or to recommend. But we all know the cost of power. It ain't gonna get any cheaper. I always tell everybody your lowest power is the one you're paying for right now. Cost of power.
Can I just clarify what you said a few minutes ago, that the city had a contract with USGS to do a study, and they canceled it before the study was complete?
They canceled it at the start of the third year, because I guess cost, it was running about $20,000 a year. I think USGS offered to do the final year for $10,000, but for reasons I don't understand, the administration, the city.
What year was that?
I don't think they took it to council. I don't think there was any discussion of council being involved. It was not mentioned to PACAB, simply ended the contract.
And what year was that?
2022.
In 2022. So does that have an impact on this report?
Well, it ended any possibility of going further with the project. Because you have to have, in order to go further with anything like this, like hydro project, you have to know what your flow data is in order to be able to go to the federal government and get a FERC permit. That gives you license then to go forward and develop the project.
And you have to have 3 consecutive years, so we couldn't start now and add back on to...
You have to pay for 3 new years now to do that. USGS is the best entity in Alaska that I know of to develop flow data on stream. Ben may have a different idea.
So, yeah, there is an important note, this lay-down data is from the tunnel discharge water. I assume that's the same, you're not gonna have a different volume of water, but there would be some sort of an impoundment structure
Yeah, I mean,
up in
look
the...
at what's in the report.
Yeah.
That would be something. I mean, there was an old system already way up canyon. That's what we'd be looking at, developing that, redeveloping that old system for whatever, and then putting in a penstock and bringing it down. I think this study had to come all the way down to the waterfront out in Jefferson.
Yeah.
And that's for a powerhouse we could build. Another alternative would be to build a powerhouse further up in the bottom of the canyon up there. You don't have as much head then. Right. So you lose some economics doing that. Because it would be a powerhouse right here down along Railway Avenue with the water then, spent water discharging into the bay. That's what that design shows there. I can't remember how much energy it was envisioned, but it's all in the report there.
Yeah, it's estimated 15% of our demand. Okay.
I mean, I'll be the first to admit, that's not a lot of power.
No,
And
not for 17
you know, you're looking at a $6 to probably a $10 million project, easy. And that's, you know, economics, the cost of making that project. So if you get it all done with grant money, that's one thing. But
yeah, the costs of construction on this scale since 2019, I think as a general consensus, there's probably about double at least. So the total cost then was estimated at 17.9 million. So So the estimated annual cost per kilowatt hour, he had it at 11.79 cents, which is currently cheaper than our residential
That's
rate.
pretty good with today's cost, but as you pointed out,
That's a-
construction costs are
Right.
exponentially higher.
And the supply chain is kind of broken. It maybe waits for some of the equipment to build it or some of the, anytime you're in construction, it seems like there's delays now.
Well, yeah, it's very hard to build a project in our country. Permitting, just the fact that we're not a great manufacturer anymore. We have to rely on technologies from other countries a lot. And so it's just very difficult.
Shipping, all that stuff doesn't magically appear on the job site.
Yeah, I'm just asking a question. I don't know who might best answer this, but this is a run-of-river type system, it seems, and I, was impoundment of any kind, like,
No, there
reviewed at all,
There
or?
was not any impoundment that would trigger a dam kind of structure going in. It was more as a collection basin gallery that would, it would just be.
Essentially
Well,
just funnel it down
like
to
you said,
a
run the
powerhouse
river.
down on the beach.
Right, I understand. I'm just thinking about the fluctuation in annual flow, and if, there is any level of impoundment, maybe that levels this out a little
I
bit.
think the issue is that it's very geologically unstable in that valley, so.
Yeah, certainly is.
That's why finding the Corps is doing something about the diversion dam, because it's considered one of the most dangerous facilities in America. If it plugs up,
Yeah,
part of town would be.
back to the original configuration.
So, I saw that happen very, very close in 1986. We had a big flood here. And I was up the canyon with the fire chief, watching it, and it plugged momentarily through the debris that was coming down. And it started backing up behind the diversion structure there, came real close, and going around it, and heading down the street, and then it
Wow,
cleared out and went away.
must have been a sight from the, down below.
Well, yeah, it was shooting out down here like it never has before, at least, that was a 1,000-year event, they said, 86. So, of course, I think we have 100-year events every year. So, it's all relative.
Something to be mindful of.
I would think you might want to look some more at 4th of Light Creek.
Absolutely.
And I went online trying to find out where the heck that thing is. The last entity that had any kind of authority over there was Chugach Electric. And I can't find anything posted anywhere on the FERC site, on anywhere.
I know Chugach applied for a grant to study that some more. I don't think they got it.
They didn't give us an A thing, they didn't get it.
Right. But obviously there's some potential there that,
I think it has higher potential than 4th of Light Creek. And not so many of the negatives that you have on low location. But again, it's only gonna be, I don't know how many megawatts that thing would produce on a peak.
but no silver bullet. It's gonna be a combination of a lot of.
I mean, I got real excited when Chugach rolled out Snow River a few years ago. I don't think you remember that. Because that was a substantial project and very close to us and close to our T-line and all kinds of things, but that lived and died very quickly because of, frankly, I don't think Chugach was really that sincere about going forward with it. But it got derailed unfairly by environmental protests, and the environmental impact of that thing, frankly, fish is non-existent, but they used that as a reason. Came out in great numbers in Moose Pass, and here when they made the presentation about it, and that's all it took. They didn't pursue it.
Okay.
That would have been a 70, minimally, I think, a 70 megawatt development. Snow River. So there's not a lot of other potential around here. Well, Homer Electric's got Grant Lake. They engineered, and quite frankly, that's the primary reason they wanted to buy the utility. They never said it. I happen to know. Yeah, that made the economics of Grant Lake substantially better for them if they owned that transmission line. But that's still there. I don't know what's going to happen with it. It's not seen with much fondness by the folks up in Moose Pass and that area for where it uses. But that's only 5 megawatts, I think. So small project.
Okay. Well, I think I'd like to maybe look at, as a board, how we want to go about visiting this topic in the future. I think this board does represent a variety of different interests in the community, and cost of energy being a major factor in any sort of development, especially on the commerce side and on the industrial side. Just as I've seen this go, forward and backwards and all sorts of, for different motivations, different reasons since I've, in my tenure here. I think it is worth, this is a good spot to bring it up, but, some more direction, and obviously work at the behest of council, but as we propose these things to them, what do you think? Maybe John?
Looking at it from the number feasibility, it's, and knowing how much costs are associated with stuff, yes, as the statement was made, what we're paying right now is going to be the lowest it is. It's just going to go up. But ultimately, it's, I don't see it penciling out to where it's going to be beneficial as a whole, plus the process that it's going to take to get any kind of grant aspect for it to push forward.
In respect to heat pumps, or
no, as far as the hydro, especially
Sure.
on Lowell, based on this number,
Yeah.
hearing that 4th of July is a higher output, be all for looking to see if something can be
Yeah.
penciled out of that.
that would be interesting. That's something I haven't seen the specifics on that research either, for that creek of the Snow River, and this I'm pretty familiar with, but that would be a good topic.
Yeah, bring some, at least throw it out there, see if there's other feasibilities.
Mm-hmm. What's your thought on the heat pumps and heat pump rebates and feasibility of?
Being from Southeast, there was a lot of communities down there that did rebates, but all of those utilities are primarily hydro based, and so the incentive for doing it made a whole lot more sense.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I know from an economic standpoint, say like Daryl's house, all electric heat baseboard, versus switching over to air source heat pumps or ground source heat pumps. It's the economic aspect of it is substantial, minimizing draw on the electric utility from the technology from heat pumps is very substantial. So I don't know what it would take for looking at a number comparison for, say, 25% of the community being on air source heat pumps versus whatever they currently had, or electric baseboard, or maybe doing a setup for people's houses that are all electric, have the incentive aspect put to them maybe a little bit higher than, say, the rest of the population that's running on oil or propane or some other fossil fuel, to offset the utilities draw. If that makes sense.
When I built my home in 1979, started in 1979, the cost of electricity retail, residential rate was 3 cents a kilowatt. It was cheaper than heating oil then. So it was also cheaper to install than an oil system. So I went with electric, thinking I was smart. I was smart for a few years. I actually did pretty well. But then I became less smart. Electricity started climbing in cost. And, that's why I put all electric in my place. Most everybody had, heating oil, hot water, primarily basically back then.
I don't want to jinx myself here, but our our costs did not increase as much as what I've been hearing around town. And I feel like a lot of people that have mentioned their costs have gone up to $900 a month or whatever, I think have heat pumps in their house. We don't. We have an oil-based boiler system and for heat, wood stove. That's why I asked the question about the metering, because I'm wondering if it's gonna sneak up on me, but.
No, ours didn't go up that much either. Like ours was literally like just not that much, but the same thing. We have a small house. We burn wood heat.
Yeah. I mean, I have a pretty big house. It's over 2,600 square foot, split level, but it's in-floor heat, oil with a wood stove. So, I think that the heat pumps are a great thing. And my question is, when you talk about the rebate options, who's that rebate going to come from?
Right.
Who's going to give the rebate? I mean, is the city? Because you're taking money away from the city by putting in these heat pumps. Well, actually, you're not because it costs to run them. But who's going to give that rebate? I do like the idea of exploring options to do a study for the 4th of July Creek. I haven't had a chance to read this report, and I'm not, this isn't my forte of understanding this stuff. I think my husband would probably read this and have lots of opinions about it, but I would like to understand it more and explore a way for the city as a whole to be able to lower the costs for everyone, I think it's important to individual homes to lower their costs and lower their, their emissions and whatnot, but I like the idea of exploring another. Can we do a study and what would the cost be for 4th of July Creek?
Okay.
And does the city have any numbers on the chamber, what their heating bill went up, what their electric bill went up or down after that they put that in there and didn't do any, no documentation,
It's not our building. It's not our building.
The city wouldn't, but the chamber.
The chamber would, the city, that's not our building. We don't keep track of
Oh, okay, so if we contact the chamber, they might have some information? Okay.
It would take going back. I remember when that heat pump was put in, and it was pretty exciting. It was an expensive project, but I was on the board then too. But it would just take going back through the finances to find out if there was any savings, and you'd have to be able to compare apples to apples. I mean, what was the cost that was done 6-7 years ago? So costs were different then.
You gotta remember, heat pumps, the energy that you use for heat pumps, you have to get familiar with what COP means, coefficients of performance. So typically, a well-functioning air source heat pump will have a coefficient of performance of around 3 to 4, I'll say on average. That means for every single kilowatt of power that it costs to operate that heat pump, you get 3 or 4 kilowatts equivalent of energy back. That's how heat pumps save money while providing heat and also providing cleaner energy for the environment. Taking out all that heat oil smoke in the environment. But that's how the economics work for you. Am I right?
Yep. Yeah. If I may, Mr. Chairman, I was hoping I could bring our little draft report. We've been monitoring 14 heat pumps, the electric use, and 12 of them, and in Seward and a couple of them in Homer area with some friends. And so it's been kind of interesting. It was just using some very simple technology to monitor the power and send it wirelessly to our website and stuff. And so we collected over the years with the data on 14 heat pumps. And of course, it's all over the board because there's people who burn a lot of wood like Daryl. So their graph, his graph is scattered all over. There's others that are really nice and tight showing how much more power he uses as it gets colder out. Because the colder it is, the heat pump's got to work. And very useful information for, say, the utilities, because we've actually identified when their peaks were versus, you know, what the peaks are in the community. So how is this going to impact the utilities over time? And what kind of load profile they can look at. Because heat pumps are pretty sweet. They're a nice steady. You can look at the forecast, temperature forecast for tomorrow, and the utility would have a pretty good idea what that increased load is going to be for heat pumps. So, but it's still draft form. We're still waiting for HFC to let us release that little report. Hope we can do some more. It's kind of interesting data. I think that my one comment on the heat pump electric rates, I mean, it was brutal what happened with our rate increase in terms of promoting heat pumps. Because having been an advocate, because when I looked at Seward, what can we do, you know, in terms of climate change? And where else can we find a product that not only reduces our carbon footprint by over 50% and will only get better as we add renewables to the system of going to heat pumps versus burning oil. So the environment's happy because customer saves money doing it over oil. And our own electric utility, guess what? Gets to make a bunch of money. What other, you know, what else do we do that benefits the environment, the customer, and the utility? I mean, it was just a wonderful hat trick. So what's happened now is the benefit to the customer has been reduced significantly because of the higher rates. Environment's still happy. Electric utilities still be happy, except that we're not going to be putting in as many heat pumps as maybe we could have. So I'm hoping, you know, we got this rebate program that's supposed to come out probably early next winter. It's going to be offering substantial rebates.
That's through the state.
Well, it's part of that
Yeah.
IRA, the federal grant, but it's going to be routed through Alaska Housing Finance. So it'll be $8,000 grant to lower income folks to put in a heat pump. That's, you know, they're going to be going to John and going, John, what can I get for $8 grand? I don't want to spend a penny more, but I want to spend every penny of that $8 grand. And if you're middle income, that's $4,000 grant, up to $4,000.
And that's through Alaska Housing, you said?
Well, Alaska Housing's gonna implement this rebate program. It's the federal Inflation Reduction Act program, part of the rebate program.
$1.1 trillion.
I mean, so it's millions of dollars coming to Alaska for.
From the infrastructure bill, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's pretty exciting. It's just that we don't really have that consumer benefit with our electric rates right now to really prompt it. So I've spent many hours pondering, and right now my best recommendation, and though heaven forbid you put me in front of the council talking about electric rates at the moment, I would encourage PACAB to look at something like, it's called a declining block rate. So if you own a heat pump, or I think an EV would fall in there as well. It's like, okay, you're paying 600, you know, standard rate for the first 600 kilowatts, whatever the average usage is for residential, you're going to pay that rate. But anything over that, if you own a heat pump or an EV, there's a lower rate. So those that have a heat pump or an EV would be eligible for a lower rate over that, you know, fixed, you know, say 600 kilowatts. I mean, there's dozens of ways to work the rates. And Seward being unregulated, we can do pretty much whatever we want. But that seemed to be the simplest. And to get that across the utilities, that look, you make nothing if nobody installs a heat pump. So if you only made half as much, you know, right now, it's Chugach charges us 12 cents, what we're putting on 18 cents as our margin. And so maybe they only made 10 cents on that extra kilowatt that was produced, that was required from the heat pump. Well, you know, that's 10 cents more than they would have got before. So, I mean, it could be a very simple, you know, accounting method to actually provide some incentive, because I'm going to be crying if this rebate and all these millions of dollars pass through and we don't take any of it because our electric rates are where they at. So I would ask at PACAB to take a serious look at recommending some kind of a rate structure that would benefit. We've got 8 months to, you know, get our act in order.
I think that is a good use for this board to do, and I think we can convey the benefits. The utility understands it's, when they have a predicted load, it's...
No, they don't understand.
Well, we have new management, right? It's under new management, so I guess that's one of the, because it didn't sell, that kind of goes back to us, like there is opportunities there. EVs and heat pumps both are heavy loads on the system that are predictable, and predictability is an important, there's value in that. So if we can figure out a way to tie that in.
It's a win-win.
We can make it a win-win. It's not right now, but.
If you can get them to just look at it.
Right.
You know, if you guys can actually get them to take a serious look at what we can do, it would be very beneficial. I mean, as PACAB that got the solar thing through, I was doing my personal battle, but it was PACAB that actually brought it home and got the final touches on it to make it useful. I think PACAB could do the same thing on promoting heat pumps and coming up with some recommendations on rate structures or rebates, but you know, that's a lot of utilities like rebates because they didn't have to go to the regulatory commission to change their rates and stuff. Well, we don't have that problem. So.
You guys can help walk the talk.
Okay.
There's been a lot of talk about doing this, a lot of talk about we're gonna get green here. But when it comes to actually doing it, there's 1,000 reasons why we don't.
Yeah.
Very many why we do.
All right. It's like a lot of good information. Thank you. It is, yeah, it's nice to have that brought to our attention there, see what we can do with it. So I guess, yeah, we're kind of going around on comments there. Is there any other thoughts on how we want to deal with energy?
I don't have any thoughts on it right now. I think I have a heat pump. I love my heat pump. My rates, you know, what I was spending in oil definitely covered it, you know, and I think hydroelectric's great. There's all kinds of things. It's nothing that anybody should ever throw off the table because they're advancing everything rapidly with a lot of that stuff. I was reading something about a giant siphon system last night actually, where they had like a 7-foot pipe that went up and then they caught it when it went down, you know, and it works. It's been going flawlessly for like 7 years, you know, but you know, things change and they advance, and we definitely need something, and we gotta find a place where it isn't taking money from one thing and giving it to the other, like the money doesn't just appear or disappear out of nowhere, you know, so it's important to realize that if we're giving a rebate somewhere, it's gotta be coming from somewhere too, because that kind of turns around and bites us sometimes. But aside from that, that's all I got.
I think an incentive the city could help with is to get rid of that, you have to use 150 watts a month, or you bill for it anyway, for people that are hooking up solar panels or heat pumps or something like that. Because it kind of takes away some of the incentive, because net metering, they pay you back when you produce more than you make. And so there you're still paying the 150 kilowatts an hour. There's a neat chart on pelletheat.org. It's cost of fuel consumption for your heat. It's what you pay per million BTUs for different fuels in your area. And I do that once in a while to see, and it does the efficiency of the appliance and then what your cost per million BTUs to heat with that fuel or electricity or whatever. And I watched electricity go at a much higher rate than everything else. It is now way past the cost of heating by propane or by wood or wood pellets, of course, but it was kind of neck and neck with propane for a while there, and it's definitely way above of fuel oil.
Right.
I recall when HEA was down doing all these presentations that they gave a chart of the cost of our utilities going up by whatever they went up just recently, but they're going to continue to go up. Is that accurate? Are they going to continue to increase year over year by a certain percentage? Do you know?
Well, I couldn't tell you like specifically like what those rates are, but it's like the cost of energy will be going up. That is kind of the constant. I can't remember. We went up 6 cents this year, but I don't think we have a plan to continue to do that necessarily. You're always going to try and keep your costs down as much as possible so that you can keep your rates down as much as possible. But yeah, and we're not the only ones dealing with high rates. Like it is everywhere in the United States right now, not just Alaska. It's everywhere. I was listening to something the other day, and in Kauai, they're on their system, and they're very alternative heavy, and they're still like 35 cents a kilowatt hour.
It's higher. It's in the 40s.
It's in the 40s now, and they're very alternative heavy.
California, it's 46 to 48
Right.
cents a kilowatt.
Right. So it's not like, I just want us to be aware too, like we're dealing with something that's not just Seward area, SES local. It's just everywhere right now, and it's tough.
It might be a kind of a warning that of things to come. I think we can expect those high rates. We're kind of lagging. We benefit from just kind of being in a quiet place in the world. But I think that's going to come to us.
And it's not like, I think it's a good thing as long as it can drive innovation ways. I do think we need to look at like hydro is like Southeast is amazing because they have hydro. And I'm originally from Portland. We had Bonneville Dam down the way. Like Bonneville Dam, it's got some downsides, but it also produces a lot of power. And so I do think if we can, use this as an opportunity to help find ways to become more efficient in what we're doing. And I do think heat pumps are great, especially when you're coming off of baseboard. That's still, even though electricity is higher, that's still a great option for a lot of people to move in that direction.
Yeah.
And so I still think there's...
You're saving 30% of your original cost. It's significant.
Yeah.
If you have mold, it's a great thing to kill the mold in your place. And Seward has a lot of places to deal with mold. Heat pumps are very helpful in that, but also they're great air conditioners.
Right.
Too. When we had all the forest fires going on and smoke everywhere, we loved our heat pump because we turned on the summertime mode on it, and it was, we lived very comfortably in our house. A lot of people were complaining about the smoke and all that other kind of stuff. So it has there's some other benefits to it.
I see that in your data. I see that.
Well, even during the summertime, not during the winter, but I want to put in another one, so I'll change that, because I'm getting too old to haul in wood. Even though I love our wood stove, it's just, I can't deal with it anymore.
The excellent point about heat pumps is that they are also, I guess, primarily the air conditioners first, right?
Did not know that.
So
it does get warm here occasionally, and it's nice to have.
I spent a week up in Fairbanks preaching heat pumps a couple weeks ago, and it's because they got to stop burning oil in what they call their air shed because of their pollution levels in the wintertime. They just have to flat out stop burning, and wood is worse than oil during those periods, and so they were very fierce. And boy, when I brought up the summer smoke and how you can keep your windows and doors closed and survive in your house, and the little air cleaner inside your house,
Filtration system that they provide.
lots of opportunities.
I feel like I need to put on a seminar for everybody in here and what these things do, because
Yeah, you'd be welcome to.
curiosity and a lot of questions and.
It's
Yeah.
a great idea.
I think it does kind of tie into the housing situation in town too. There's all these different eras of houses from back in the day when they were coal or whatever. And, did they burn coal in?
In fact, the house I grew up in,
Right.
Second Avenue, is still up there. It's that gray house on the corner, Second and Adams Street. That's where I grew up. That had a coal furnace in it. It was taken out before my parents bought the place in 1952 or 3. But they just had an old oil burner thing put in, and just one big floor. No heating all around. Just one big heater in the middle of the living room and the floor. And that's what we grew up with, but that was coal originally. Where this building sit, the old federal building, the old city hall, that was coal heated up. Went away with their place.
Okay.
That had a big, because I used to go shovel the clinkers out, one of my jobs. My mother was the judge upstairs, and that had an auger system that would feed it in. And burnt coal had a big coal chute and deliver it up and down. It was that stinky old low BTU coal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We've had a variety of different heat sources commonly used in town. So, yeah, that, you're welcome to do that. It would be a good, maybe a little presentation and Q&A for benefits of mini splits. All right. How are we doing on the board comments? Any other discussion points or?
Yeah, there's one more website that I forgot to mention. Actually, I heard this from Phil. It was Rewiring America, and that has a lot of grant opportunities and tax incentives and a lot of information. There's a lot of, you can spend hours on that website, a lot of links and a lot of different information. And that pellet heat one that I mentioned, you enter the cost of the fuel in your area, so it is area specific.
Okay.
And that's really good. And as far as what other utilities are doing, Chuyak's right on the other side of Grants Creek, they do not charge the minimum of the 150 kilowatts per hour. Our friend has a house that when they leave, they just have the tape on the pipes, don't turn off the power, and his electric bill is under $12 a month. But then when they do use it, it is for 571 kilowatts. I mean, for the month, it was $126.66. That's just on the other side.
I think that does kind of bring up another topic that I've heard some concerned about is understanding our rate structure. It might be a valuable discussion point at just to review what our current rate structure is, get those, how that works for the different rate classes. So I think, yeah, a lot of the cost per kilowatt hour went up, but a big chunk of the electric bill, or what people think of the electric bill, is water and sewer and the customer charges and those things that are adding to that cost, and that's why it's so high. That the actual per kilowatt used really isn't that much for a small house, but if you're a big user, I guess it can be quite a bit.
And then businesses that get a higher rate.
So, I'm sorry?
Businesses get a higher rate.
Right, yeah, and industrial gets a...
I'm not talking industrial, there's
Yeah.
very few actual industrial
Right.
ones in sewer. Do you know how many there are? I mean, does anybody know? I was asking.
Three.
Yeah.
Yeah, so industrial, it's just all these small businesses that make this town work. They really pay an extra monthly fee, they pay extra kilowatt per hour.
Yeah, it would be good just to discuss how that all lays out, and maybe we could, who is managing that now? That's through MEA?
Yeah, it's, the manager's name is Brian Hickey.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think if, without objection, go ahead and end this work session. It's good discussion from all. We normally would do comments at the end of a normal, do we do that in a work session or no? No, okay. I think we've gone around and discussed this. There's a lot of good information put out, so yeah, I'll go ahead and close this work session and see y'all in 2 weeks.
Okay.